I have been asked, and I have watched people struggle with this, perhaps as you are struggling with it right now. We hear this profound statement: the observer is the observed, and we grasp it with the mind. But the heart, the very core of our being, remains utterly untouched. The question is then posed, I intellectually understand this, but what is necessary to perceive it, to go beyond this intellectual level? This is the great gap, isn't it? The chasm between the concept and the reality. And I must ask, first, do we truly even accept this intellectually? Please question yourself on this. Don't just accept my inquiry. When you say, yes, I logically agree, what has actually taken place, you have followed a line of reasoning, a series of words, and concluded that the logic holds, that it seems sound. But is this intellectual acceptance anything more than a sophisticated form of ignorance? We have become masters at collecting concepts, especially in this modern age where we can access the world's wisdom in an instant. We consume information. We like a profound quote. We share a spiritual idea, and we mistake this rapid consumption, this mental categorization, for understanding. When I say I intellectually agree with you, it really means very little, perhaps absolutely nothing. It is often just a form of convenient social or intellectual acceptance, a way of saying, yes, you seem to be right, which always carries the shadow of, but you may be wrong. This kind of acceptance is superficial. It has no value because it does not shake the foundations of my being. It is an ornament I add to the structure of me, but it leaves the structure itself unchanged. So, I must insist that we first see the trap of this so-called intellectual acceptance. It is a dead end. It is the mind's cleverest way of preventing perception, because in accepting the idea, the mind believes the journey is over, when in fact it has not even begun. It is like looking at a picture of a fire and believing you have felt its warmth. We must, therefore, set aside this verbal agreement, this logical conclusion, and face the fact itself, the raw, unadorned truth. And the truth, the fact, is that the observer is the observed. Now, to see this, we cannot remain in the abstract. We must take something real, something that is happening within us. Let us take a feeling that is known to so many, perhaps to you, a profound, aching loneliness. I'm speaking of that tremendous feeling of isolation, that sense of having no deep fundamental relationship with anything or anyone, a feeling of being completely cut off. This feeling, when it arises, is often terrifying. It depresses me. It brings a vast, anxious fear. And what is my natural, conditioned instinct when this feeling washes over me? My instinct is to run. I must escape it. I must suppress it, find a distraction, or try to rationalize it away. I will run off to meet people, to immerse myself in the noise of a crowd, to lose myself in work, or to seek solace in entertainment, whether that's the football match, the endless scroll of a social media feed, or even a formalized religion, which so often becomes the most sophisticated escape of all. I seek any activity that will cover up, muffle, or allow me to avoid this raw state of what is. But do you see what happens in this very act of escape? The escape itself, the running away from the fact, creates the division. The moment I say, I am lonely, but I must not be lonely, I have created conflict. I have split reality into two: the fact, my loneliness, and the ideal, my desire not to be lonely. This escape, born of fear, is not only divisive, which guarantees a life of internal conflict, but it also makes it impossible for me to ever understand the very thing I am running from. The energy I could use for understanding is completely consumed by the act of running. So the inquiry must go deeper. I must ask myself, is this loneliness, this feeling of desperate, anxious isolation, something separate from me? When I say I'm lonely, am I, the observer, looking at this separate thing called loneliness, the observed, or is the I that very loneliness? You see, my whole life, my self centered activity, my ambition to become something, my desperate need for security, my habit of building images about myself and others, all of this activity of the self has cultivated, watered, and built the very walls of this isolation. The thing I call loneliness is not an alien entity that has invaded me. It is the result of my own thought, my own actions, my own way of living. Therefore, that loneliness is not separate from me. If it were separate, the problem would be simple. If loneliness were like a snake in the room, separate from me, I could act on it. I could run from the room. I could try to kill the snake. I could suppress my fear of it. My relationship to it would be one of action. But if that loneliness is me, if I am that state, then what is one to do? Please, you must understand the depth of this question. If I am the loneliness, all my old habits of action become meaningless. I cannot run away from myself. I cannot suppress myself, though I may try. I cannot fight myself without creating more division and conflict. The entire mechanism of escape, based on the illusion of a me, separate from the feeling, is suddenly revealed as utterly useless. I am that loneliness. I am that anxiety. I am that fear. So I find myself at this critical junction, having perhaps seen in a flash that I am this loneliness, that I am this fear. My entire life I have been accustomed to doing something about my feelings. The habit of a lifetime, the habit of all human consciousness is to act upon, to fix, to escape, or to indulge. But now, in this moment of clarity, I realize I cannot do anything about it. If I am the problem, what action can I take? I cannot fight myself. I cannot run from myself. I cannot suppress myself. Any action I take is the very movement of the me that is the loneliness. And in that realization, an extraordinary thing happens. The conflict, the struggle, the internal battle ends. It must. The war is over because one of the two warring factions has been seen as an illusion. There is no longer me versus the loneliness. There is just this state. But please, we must be very clear here. The conflict ends, but the thing remains. The fact of loneliness, the deep, aching isolation is still there. In fact, it may feel more intense, more present, because now all the energy I was dissipating in running away, in fighting, in distraction has returned. There is no longer any leakage of energy. I am left, perhaps for the first time, fully with the fact of what is. And this is the real precipice. This is where the mind, which is so accustomed to movement, becomes profoundly agitated or deeply still. So here is the new inquiry, the only inquiry that matters at this point. Can my attention, can my mind remain with this loneliness completely? When I say remain, I don't mean for a second or a minute or an hour, which is just a measurement of time. I mean, can it stay with it without any movement of thought? This means, can I be with this feeling without a single word of judgment, without naming it loneliness or fear, because the very word, the label, is already a form of escape, a categorization from the past? Can I look at it without the desire for it to go away and without the subtle wish to hold on to it to understand it? Can I be with it with all its anxiety, all its fear, all the profound complexity of it totally? This implies a stillness of the mind, a state in which the mind is no longer seeking a result, no longer trying to solve the problem, but is simply, passively, and yet intensely aware. This is where the ultimate trap lies. As I attempt to do this, I must be so careful. If I look at this loneliness as an observer, as an I who is now looking at it, the problem arises all over again, doesn't it? The division is back, just in a more subtle, more spiritual sounding disguise. The I has now become the spiritual watcher, the meditator, the one who is aware, and the loneliness is still the thing being observed. I have simply recreated the prison, painting the bars a different color. I see this happening everywhere in this desperate modern search for mindfulness or presence. We practice being present with our anxiety, but we are doing it with the motive of fixing it, of healing ourselves, of becoming better. This motive, this goal, is the observer. It is the past projecting a future, and therefore it is incapable of seeing what is now. So, the question is, can we look at it without the observer as a whole? What does this mean? It means there is no center, no me who is looking. There is only the state of loneliness itself. There is only seeing, not a seer and the seeing. This is not an action you can do. You cannot will this to happen. You cannot practice a technique to achieve this, because the you who practices is the observer. It is not a goal to be reached. It is a state that comes into being when you have seen the total falsity, the complete futility of the observer's every move. It is the seeing of the trap, the complete seeing of it, that frees you from the trap. When you look at this loneliness, this fear in this way, which is to say, when it is perceived in a state of total attention without the me at the center, something profound occurs. When there is no division, no judge, no evaluator, and therefore no conflict, all the energy that is this loneliness is present, and in that total, silent, choiceless perception, in that blaze of attention where the past, the observer is not operating, the thing you call loneliness disappears. It is gone totally, never to come back. Why? Because it is not that you have conquered it, it is not that you have dissolved it. It is that the very structure of loneliness, which is built and held in place by the thought I am lonely, by the self-centered I, is the observer when the observer is not. The thing he creates is not. You have not solved the problem, you have dissolved the entity that creates the problem. This is not a process in time. It is an explosion, a revolution in the very structure of consciousness itself.